Hello, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's Q&A, part of the ExecuNet Fresh Start series. I'm Tony Vlahos, and I'm thrilled to be your host for this exciting conversation about what? About blending corporate job searches with independent consultancy. So let's think about this for a moment. What if your next step could open two doors at once? Sounds kind of intriguing, right? Combining a job search with launching an independent consultancy is a strategy that many executives are using to expand their opportunities and elevate their careers. And I guess you suppose you can as well, which is why you're here. So I'm really glad you made the decision to join us. And joining us to talk about how to make this dual approach work for you is a colleague I admire so much. Harriette Lowenthal is an ExecuNet coach. In fact, the director of coaching for ExecuNet. She works with people at your level every day to help them move to their next great next. So whether you're just curious about consultancy or ready to dive in, please stick around because Harriette will tell us everything that you need to know. Let's formally, officially welcome Harriette. Yay, Harriette. Nice to see you again.
Thank you, Tony. Nice to join you today.
Super. So I'm going to start, Harriette, with, I guess, sort of a background question. I'm really curious, what inspired you to specialize in guiding executives to combine corporate roles with independent consulting?
Well, I guess it's through my own personal experience, in addition to what I hear from a number of executives. The skill sets that I've acquired, the skill sets that they've acquired, have come from a variety of places. Some of them certainly from their professional experience, their education, certifications, etc. And yet, many of us have enjoyed the opportunity to volunteer or sometime to participate on boards, some of which are nonprofit, which enable us to acquire and use additional skill sets. And for me, the other that happened is even while working full time, there were friends or individuals who would that I'd met along the way who wanted to pick my brain or help me to help them initiate an opportunity or take care of a problem. And therefore, I ended up sort of doing quasi consulting.
Mhm.
So it's being called upon about that expertise, whether it's pro bono or for pay. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to quickly set up an LLC and hang a shield out, so to speak, and have a consulting company, although many choose to go that route, usually for accounting purposes, as they're sort of putting their toe in the water. But it can be very fulfilling to have challenges on a smaller scale. There's a number of people who have done MBA programs or executive MBA programs, and their cohorts have stayed very close to one another. And so, as they're going through their own business challenges and so on, they call upon their cohort partners, if you will, from back in the day to join them and to help them. And so, that's another way I find people are ending up with consulting opportunities.
So tell us, please, why is now an opportune time for executives who are leaning into job search, or at least seriously thinking about it, to combine that search with an independent consultancy?
Well, I think there's so much change going on within organizations, redefining strategies, downsizing, all sorts of things. And so to really focus only on sort of a corporate full-time role can be very discouraging because the openings just aren't there or you just can't find them. Simultaneously, though, those organizations are still having problems to solve that they need to address and or opportunities that they need to pursue or growth pursuits where they don't have the talent to do such. some of them are not quite ready to create new positions or backfill a position that's been put on hold, or even have someone leave the organization in order to create space for another new hire. They're just not there for a variety of reasons. And so I know we'll get into this a bit later, but the value that someone can bring to an organization, that's the real focus. How you bring that value, be it a full-time employee or otherwise, creates a broader opportunity. And that's what I see people really looking for, in addition to sometimes continuing to look for that ideal full-time role.
Right. So let's talk about someone who's got a strictly traditional corporate background. What are the first steps they must take toward an independent consulting gig?
So I think it's stepping back and figuring out what value do you offer? What can you bring to an organization? What's your knowledge base? And then secondarily, it's network, network, network. Who do you know? Who can you talk to? Who might provide you with trusted advice in terms of how to propose that offering? I'll give you an example. I coached someone who had left a large organization. He actually took an early retirement package because of some change in strategy. He decided, that's it, I need to move on elsewhere. Because of that, he didn't feel comfortable, and he was asked to not join one of their direct competitors for a defined period of time. And he looked in, he had some interviews, I'll say, but because he didn't grow up in that industry, he wasn't gaining any kind of traction and really finding something different, quote unquote. He had a friend, an ex-colleague who had left that organization, and he said, I have an idea, we could really use your help over here. We're just about to launch a different distribution process of our products, and no one here knows anything about doing that. You know the client base that we're going after. It was a windows and door replacement. So as opposed to going directly to the customer, they were wanting to sell through Lowe's and Home Depot and the like. So similar customer base, but very different product that this executive knew about. So he came in as a consultant to help them. So, come in, understand it, give us your ideas, help us put together a plan. It was a 60-day gig. It was a 90-day gig. It was a 6-month gig. And then he called me and said, you know what? I think they want to hire me. I think they're going to offer me a position. Because since we spoke, we now have the sales structure of what it's going to look like. We've been talking about identifying the kinds of people they need to have on board. And now they realize they need someone to run it. And lo and behold, after that 6-month period, he ended up with a full-time senior level job running the organization that he had in fact created as a consultant. And so he was able then to stay there until that timing was up, and then have a wider choice at that point of where he wanted to go, plus the addition of additional industry experience. So he broadened his skill base and possibilities through consulting that led to a full-time job. And I've
It's
had that happen more than once.
it's a great story, and it kind of highlights a concern, right, that a lot of executives have, which is, well, I need to focus on my job search. I can't be out there promoting myself as a consultant. It at times seems like it's two different things. Tell us how it really isn't. I think you addressed it a bit with the story, but more precisely, what is it about, for example, communicating your value that is just good, full stop, and helps you get noticed and get the kinds of opportunities that you either want or, weren't really expecting, but are very welcome, right?
Right. Well, communicating your value, assuming that you're clear on what your value proposition is and what you bring to the table, is necessary regardless. That you have to know yourself. So accurate self-awareness, having a clear value proposition and story to communicate is important regardless of the role that you're taking on, whether it's a corporate title and a full-time role, or whether you're coming in as a consultant, a thought leader to provide something to that organization. So that's sort of necessary regardless of what you're doing. Also, when you think about what it is that you're adding to that organization to either solve their problems or pursue their opportunities or growth or whatever it is, that's the other piece. And you could add that conceivably as a full-time employee, or you could add that as a consultant. So that's a given. And so that foundation work is essential no matter what your targets are.
Mhm.
The other thing is, I don't necessarily tell them initially to offer to an organization, hey, look, I'm willing to take on, as a consultant or so on straight away. But it might come up in the process of interviews and so on. Or if there's, a delay in bringing people on board, offering to come in as an interim. It actually does two things. It gives the organization a chance to sort of find out what it's like to have you there and work with you in the value. And it
Mhm.
gives the executive a chance to try out the organization. Do I really want to be here? Are these the people I want to work with? It's far easier, obviously, to end a consulting engagement than it is to either voluntarily or involuntarily realize it's not the right fit and have to move on from there. So it can create flexibility if positioned well.
Mhm. You've drawn attention a bit to, I know, a primary concern of people who are thinking, hey, I know I'm great at what I know, I'm known for it, but this business of going out there and targeting clients isn't highly appealing to me. I don't know how to do it. I've never done it. It seems like it's just a lot of work. Let's talk about that a bit. There are other aspects to this we will get to, but how do you go about this when your entire career you've been part of a matrix company where you didn't necessarily have to do that work? What do you advise, Harriet?
Well, it does take a lot of homework and sort of a SWOT analysis of what's going on in the marketplace based on what you know and what you're familiar with. So you could think of your former clients or customers, what's going on in their world. And so reading articles, staying on top of the business, joining professional organizations, talking to previous colleagues. Um, if you can, talking to some of those organizations to find out what their problems are. So some of that can be proactive research. The other can be attending conferences or presentations or talks. I mean, there's a plethora of information across the internet if you start playing around with search terms to find out the top 10 problems or top 10 opportunities or whatever your top 10 is that you're searching for and look at it that way. You can find experts in a given field on a LinkedIn or other platforms who you want to connect with, who are thought leaders in that arena, and find out what are they writing about, what are they saying are the problems, and so on. So the clients can come from people you know and situations you know. They can come from recommendations from those people of people you don't know, but you kind of have to go out and start exploring and starting to talk to people about what they're seeing, what's going on within their organizations. And that helps to begin to create not only a target client list, but sometimes a referral list as well. of
Mhm.
people who can refer you to those things.
Right. So you need a compelling, relevant value story. We've established that. Do you need a pitch, or is it more organic than that? Meaning you're out and about, your reputation precedes you, walk into a room, virtual or otherwise, and people know what to expect from you. Is there something more you need to do, and how do you do that without appearing to be pushy or salesy? Is a question that I often get from executives that are contemplating this move.
Well, it's presenting your value
Mm.
and your story, both verbally and having the collateral to support that. And, again, there could be an and equation in there. Talked to someone yesterday who um, it's not consulting so much, but he's looking for advisory board kinds of positions, some of which he'd like to get paid for. And he's been on boards, and he's looking for whatever that next corporate opportunity is. Hasn't gotten quite to consulting yet, but you can have a document, um, a snapshot of yourself, your career, the highlights, and so on, which can help you tell your story and can help people remember your story once you're gone.
Mhm.
Now, if you've crossed the path where you say, I'm establishing a consulting business, it's the same thing. You still need something to present yourself as a consultant. It's usually not a PowerPoint slide deck, can be, but something that you can leave behind that communicates the value of what you're going to bring. So again, whether that you're bringing that to a full-time job or to consultancy, you have to have a story, you have to be able to communicate it in a meaningful way, and you have to have collateral, I guess I would call it, that would help you tell your story, whether it's a document, a LinkedIn profile, a company landing page, if you're going that route, whatever it is. But there needs to be that continuity and consistency of message because you're marketing. And you can be as proactive with that, targeting clients, doing outreach, and so on. Or sometimes it's reactive, being ready to respond to requests, referrals, etc.
Mhm. We hear at times from executives who are deep in job searching, and we all know if you've been through it, as I suppose many of you are now, it can be a protracted experience. It could take months to land what's right for you. And sometimes when we're in that focused mode, we run the risk in a fast-paced market of getting out of touch at times with trends and other advances in our sector. How does being an independent consultant or pursuing that while you're job searching help you?
It keeps you on top of, I think, the trends, as you mentioned, what's new, what people are doing, etc. Part of consulting also is sort of that passion for learning, that love of learning or continuous learning that we think about. And that's a trait and an aptitude that many executives we work with, that curiosity that perhaps has started long ago. Some, when they've become stagnant in their so-called careers, are looking for something new and exciting, and that can come in a number of different ways. As I was mentioning, sometimes that learning can come through volunteering, being on boards, consulting with others, etc. But whatever that spark is, you've got to have something new and different to bring, to offer of value, not just doing things the way we've always done it and that sort of thing.
Mhm. I want to take a chat right now from one of our viewers. Thank
Yes.
you for writing in. And it reads, Harriet, should my story, value prop, and resume be separate from my regular job searching CV, resume, LinkedIn profile, and so on? Question is there a different approach? I think you said earlier that there's a sameness, obviously, because it's your story, but tell us how you might approach marketing materials differently if you're pursuing both simultaneously.
Um, First of all, it doesn't have to be, it can be. It depends on your investment and what you choose to invest in that process. But having, The resume is designed to detail your career story. The consulting information could be a consolidation of that, or simply a one-pager, I like to say, document that highlights your career, but really focuses on the value that you bring. So it's usual that the people that I've worked with who've had that and strategy, they have used a single page, interesting looking document to promote themselves, more of their consulting. And a lot of it's through conversation and so on. They haven't necessarily had a separate web page and those kinds of things. And they use their resume as backup for when people want a deeper dive and they want more specific information about their full career. So they're not entering the door with a resume for consulting. They're entering the door with something else and then using the resume as support information.
Mhm. I want to take a moment and acknowledge a chat that we all received from, again, Will behind the scenes, inviting you to let us know if you're serious about exploring this further, because Harriet and her complement of, gosh, so many talented people are always there to help you do just that. Among other things, obviously, whether you want to pursue a full-time corporate job search or approach this and scenario that Harriet's been outlining for us. So it's as simple as following the link that Will has sent over, just to let us know that you'd like to talk. There's absolutely no cost to talking to us and getting your head around this. That's what we're here for. So we hope that you will do that and let us know how we can help specifically. So
Could
there's
I just
always.
build on that last answer real quick?
Mhm.
I'm sorry. Um, I was just thinking, you probably would not have two separate LinkedIn profiles unless you've decided that you want your consulting to be its own entity, a separate company. Then you might have a company landing page and then your personal profile. What most people do, though, at least initially, is they only have the one profile, and that's about themselves. Now, they may have a link to a landing page elsewhere that talks more about their consulting and so on. So it kind of depends on your strategy of how much of a dive you're taking into consulting versus job search.
Thanks for clarifying that. Often we hear from people who are uncertain about their future. They aren't exactly in a full job search mode, that there's enough concern there for them to ponder, how do I future-proof myself? Talk to us a bit about how walking both these paths together can accomplish that.
Well, it's, whether you're looking for clients, target companies, let's say, where you can add value or target opportunities. Um, the reason why it's often an and is because, especially at the executive level, those opportunities aren't necessarily posted or part of a job post. And so you're really researching, where are these companies at? Who needs my help? Where can my expertise be utilized or valued? I mean, those are the kinds of questions that you're asking yourself, and you're kind of looking at the path. So, cranes is an example. I have a number of individuals that read that religiously to find out what's going on within their certain business sectors or communities, with changes of people moving around, of what they're saying about new products or services that are kind of taking that lead. So again, it's always being informed and always keeping that at the top of your mind. Um, I'm not saying don't look at job posts, but the thing is, we don't know why that job is posted. We don't know whether it's a practice of that organization to post all jobs. We have no idea where they are in the process of candidates and screening and so on. We don't even know how candidates are screened by just uploading a resume. So I say it could be an indication of something going on, but we have to do some further investigation about that company, hopefully through someone we know or someone who knows someone, to find out what the real story is and what's going on. And that is where those opportunities sometimes reveal themselves. I know we often say it's about 10, 15% or so that executives find their next role simply through a job posting without doing other work around that. And therefore, you have to think about, where do I want to invest my time? So the time investment, whether it's job search or consulting opportunity, greatly overlaps one another. It's not as pulled apart or separate as people make it out to be necessarily.
We know that when an executive is focused fully on a job search, that alone is an overwhelming experience for anyone who's gone through it. And it can run the range of emotions as well as require a lot of you that you aren't necessarily good at. It's not your job to be great at job search. So why would you be exceptional at that, right? So I'm curious, Harriet, because I mentioned earlier in outline, terms that we work with people to help them pursue and ultimately land the role or the two opportunities that we've been talking about. Could you elaborate a bit on what it's like to work with you if you're interested in pursuing both? What does an action plan, if you will, look like?
So I think it starts with, I'll just call it career coaching and sort of exploration of, what is it that you want to do? What do you enjoy doing? What would you like to avoid doing? What are some other criteria parameters around sort of whatever's next for you? What does that look like? How do you define that? And then let's talk about everything from style, remote versus in office, location. Do you want to manage a team? Do you like working independently? Are you someone who likes to be there to see things through start to finish? What about juggling multiple priorities? The whole idea about marketing yourself. To what extent do you want to do that, to glean business, etc. So the front part of it is really guiding someone through a personal exploration of what's important to them, and then establish those priorities accordingly, be it job search, be it consulting, or perhaps a combination of both. If it's one or the other, excuse me, those paths may look slightly different. And also what kind of collateral is produced. But if it's that and, then we continue to talk about that, because it does make a difference in terms of the collateral, in terms of LinkedIn, and even a bit about the search. The other is, are there opportunities to join another project? Someone I coached a few years back retired from Procter and Gamble, and he didn't know what he wanted to do. There was a part of him that wanted to teach at the local community college, and I think he ended up doing that anyway. But he had a couple of friends, excuse me, one whom had set up a consulting business, and he was asked to join them on a project. So all of a sudden, he's working with colleagues, doing what they did, but just doing it in a smaller company in a different way. And that convinced him that he didn't want to start a consulting company on his own, but he did like joining others. And so all of a sudden, his search was to find out what other opportunities might be looking for someone to join them in providing his expertise versus going down the path of setting up a company. And he also figured out he really didn't want to go back and work full time. So that kind of was his path and discovery. So that it's helping someone sort that out, and then figuring out then what's the strategy, what's the best path to accomplish that, and then what's the execution.
Mhm. So most leaps forward, especially the big ones, ask something of us, which some would call soul searching, others would say, well, it's self-assessment. Are there particular things that anyone watching, listening today should self-assess as they ponder whether this dual approach is for them? What would you hope someone would come, for example, to a meeting with you, having sort of asked themselves so that they are ready for a better conversation?
Well, it's pros and cons at one or the other. Um, whether they like I was going to say stability of a full-time job, but that is in question in a lot of places right now in the world that we live in, of how that actually plays out in the real world. Um, do they have enough of an income or savings or whatever to live on while they're setting this up and going through this process? And what about the whole idea of working independently, um, and not being necessarily a part of a set team or leading a set team? And also, finally, what value and what expertise can they bring to the marketplace? What do you offer? What do you bring that could be helpful to someone else?
Absolutely. Well, I didn't think we would go very long. Again, we thought this would be just a great primer, a way to help you begin to get your heads more firmly around the possibility of a dual approach here, job searching and consulting added to the mix. Harriet, anything we've not touched on that you hoped we would? And if anyone's got some lingering thoughts, by all means share so we can um, answer your questions. But Harriet, anything that leaps to mind that we haven't talked about?
Just that I think we pride ourselves, myself, my team, our other colleagues, in always tailoring our advice to an individual. Everyone, and I mean this very sincerely, everyone is unique. Everyone has their own story, their own talents, etc., and their own challenges and opportunities. And so we need to understand that and put that together in a meaningful strategy. And that's really what we work toward, is customizing an approach and meeting people wherever they are and taking them forward along a path of whatever makes sense for them. And so we have resources and whatnot that you can reference and refer to that are very helpful, but navigating your path, I'll say, is really individualized.
All the more reason to check in with you, I find, because we often don't see what we can be doing. We might have a
Yes.
notion of what we've done, obviously, but where we could go, it often takes someone from the outside looking in with that valuable perspective weighing in to encourage us and help us see the possibilities. I find that to be especially acutely helpful working with someone like a coach, a mentor even. So thank you, Harry. Thank you all
Welcome.
for tuning in. Whoop, I think there's one more.
Oh,
Wait, one more. Oh, there was
oh,
a oh, you're welcome.
yes. Thank
Um,
you. Thank you all.
hope to see you at the next Q&A. Thanks.
Great.
Bye.